All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're looking at a genuinely fascinating system called George Was Right. It's this incredible intersection of civic transparency, data engineering, and AI. And honestly, it tackles a huge problem that affects literally anyone who consumes the news today.
The whole core mission of the project boils down to one simple, powerful idea: what we were told versus what actually happened. It grabs Canadian federal legislation and regulations straight from the source, and then maps those official documents directly against media coverage. What this does is reveal the gap between the actual decisions the government is making and what the media cycle decides to actually talk about.
Now, what makes this tool so unique is its strict refusal to rely just on news searches. Older attempts at this kind of thing would just ask an AI to search the news and summarize it. But here's the catch. Relying purely on a news search only tells you what was covered. It literally cannot tell you what the media completely missed. So to find the silence, you absolutely have to start with the primary data first.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, the truth versus news. Second, core system design principles. Third, the human-AI pipeline. Fourth, independence versus factual accuracy. And finally, measuring the media silence. Let's get into it.
Starting with Section 1, the truth versus news, grounding analysis in primary data. So instead of just trusting a search engine snippet or some chatbot's outdated training data, this pipeline directly pulls in structured JSON for federal bills straight from the Open Parliament API, as well as RSS feeds from the Canada Gazette. And that Gazette part is especially crucial because it holds proposed and finalized regulations. We're talking about decisions that frequently get passed without a single second of public floor debate. By anchoring every claim in this hard primary data, the system knows exactly what the government is up to before it ever even glances at the news.
Moving on to Section 2, Core System Design Principles, the rules of the game.
A really brilliant way this system builds credibility is through its prime directive: report divergence, don't hunt for it. I mean, think about it. If you build a tool designed to just hunt for a scandal, it loses its credibility pretty fast. So finding that the media perfectly aligns with the government or finding absolutely zero coverage at all, those are treated as first-class, completely valid outcomes. Operationally speaking, the command line interface, or CLI, is the absolute source of truth here. The web interface just shells out to the CLI, meaning there is absolutely zero duplicated logic.
If we look at the tech stack running the AI, you can easily plug in the usual suspects like Anthropic or Gemini, but take a look at the web chat provider feature. This is so cool. It uses browser automation to access free LLMs like DeepSeek, Grok, and ChatGPT right through their standard web interfaces. So the system's researcher agent can actually use built-in web search without needing a single paid API key. How great is that?
All right, Section 3, the human-AI pipeline. 2 phases, 0 runaway agents.
Now, to be clear, this is not some runaway AI that just publishes whatever it feels like. It is a very carefully gated assembly line. In Phase 1, a media coverage researcher agent goes out and finds news about a specific bill. But before it can take another step, it hits a hard human checkpoint. A real person explicitly approves or rejects the agent's sources. Only after that does Phase 2 kick in, where an analyst agent compares the official record against those approved findings. And finally, a human has to approve the final draft before it ever hits the public web app.
Now, if you've ever messed around with an AI tool, you are probably wondering, how on earth does this system stop the model from just making up a plausible-sounding but totally fake URL for its citations? It's notoriously a massive problem in AI research.
Well, the solution they came up with is just remarkably elegant. The trust boundary isn't some clever prompt begging the AI to behave. The trust boundary is plain old Python code. Whenever the AI outputs a comparison, Python code strictly checks every single official and media URL against the human-approved dossier in the database. If the AI hallucinates a fake citation, boom, the system catches it instantly, and it either strips out the fake claim or just drops the data entirely.
Okay, Section 4, independence versus factual accuracy. Untangling the metrics.
The system actually deliberately separates factual accuracy from journalistic independence into 2 totally different axes. Because, it's really easy to just assume that if the media repeats exactly what the government says, it must be bad journalism. But that is a total bias trap. A news piece can perfectly align with the government and still be highly independent verified reporting. On the flip side, it can align but just be rated as journalism, which is basically just a repackaged government press release. Evaluating these 2 things separately is what keeps the data honest. Furthermore, categorizing a news outlet as legacy or independent is just a hard-coded descriptive tag. It runs off a deterministic list. It is never an AI making a judgment call about which outlet is inherently more trustworthy. A massive legacy broadcast network and a solo YouTuber can both produce rigorous, independent journalism, or they can both churn out lazy journalism. The system just notes the type of institution that published it without ever implying a ranking of quality.
Which brings us to Section 5, measuring the media silence, the power of zero coverage.
So the public-facing site reads way more like a public exhibit register than a blog. And its flagship feature is this thing called the Silence Index. It literally groups every single no coverage found result by month, shining a massive spotlight on exactly which government actions were completely ignored by the press.
This acts as a really crucial defense against accusations of bias. As the project puts it, the claim isn't coverage was wrong, it's coverage didn't exist. That is a hard fact about absence, not spin. This is incredibly profound for those Canada Gazette regulations we talked about earlier. Since regulations don't get public floor debates like bills do, if the media ignores them, that Gazette notice is quite literally the only public record. Media silence essentially becomes the loudest signal of all.
Right alongside that silence index, the web app features a source ledger. This basically aggregates all those human-approved citations from Phase 1. It shows you the raw citation volume and how often each category, legacy or independent, was rated as original reporting versus journalism. Once again, this is purely raw data aggregation. It explicitly avoids implying any sort of trustworthiness ranking, leaving you, the viewer, to make up your own mind.
By building this human-gated AI pipeline totally grounded in primary laws, George was right manages to transform invisible data into an undeniable metric. It leaves us with a pretty heavy question. What happens to a democracy when the most critical decisions are precisely the ones the media never even talks about? Because ultimately, the power of this tool isn't in finding the spin, it's in measuring exactly what isn't there. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer.